While NASA and SpaceX dominate today's headlines about Mars exploration, the most daring attempts to reach the Red Planet happened 60 years ago behind the Iron Curtain. The Soviet Union launched secret Mars missions that were so advanced, so ambitious, and so catastrophically dangerous that, honestly, they make Elon Musk's Starship look like a neighborhood science project. These missions literally exploded on launch pads, crashed into alien soil, and vanished into cosmic silence, but they paved the way for everything we know about interplanetary travel today. Did you know the Soviets actually landed on Mars before anyone else, but it was completely by accident? The beginning. While everyone was obsessed with the moon landing in 1969, the Soviet Union was quietly plotting something far more audacious, a mission to Mars that would make Apollo 11 look like a neighborhood joyride. The space race wasn't just about planting flags on lunar soil, it was about who could conquer the ultimate prize, the Red Planet. Behind the Iron Curtain, Soviet engineers were designing spacecraft that could travel 140 million miles through the cosmic void, endure radiation storms, and attempt humanity's first landing on another world. This wasn't science fiction, this was Cold War reality. While Neil Armstrong was taking his famous first steps, Soviet mission planners were already calculating launch windows to Mars, designing heat shields that could survive atmospheric entry at 12,000 miles per hour, and developing communication systems that could beam signals across interplanetary distances. The Soviet space program had already shocked the world with Sputnik in 1957, and Yuri Gagarin's historic flight in 1961, but their Mars ambitions were on an entirely different scale. These weren't just orbital missions or lunar flybys, they were attempting to land functional spacecraft on a planet where temperatures swing from 70 degrees Fahrenheit to minus 195 degrees Fahrenheit, where dust storms can rage for months, and where one miscalculation means losing everything in the dark expanse of space. What happened next would change everything we thought we knew about the space race, and most of the world never even heard about it. Mars 1. A single radio signal from 140 million miles away changed everything, and then went silent forever. On November 1, 1962, the Soviet Union launched Mars 1, an 894-kilogram metallic behemoth packed with cameras, spectrometers, and enough scientific instruments to revolutionize our understanding of the Red Planet. This wasn't just another satellite circling Earth. This was humanity's first serious attempt to reach another world, and the Soviets were betting everything on it. The spacecraft was a marvel of 1960s engineering, solar panels that could function in the weak sunlight beyond Earth's orbit, a communication system designed to transmit data across interplanetary distances, and a heat shield capable of surviving the brutal journey through space. For 106 days, Mars 1 hurtled through the cosmic void, its trajectory perfectly calculated to intercept Mars during its 1963 closest approach to Earth. Soviet engineers monitored every signal, every telemetry reading, as their creation became the first human-made object to venture into deep space with a specific destination in mind. The mission was so classified that even NASA didn't fully understand what the Soviets had achieved until years later. But on March 21, 1963, at a distance of 65.9 million miles from Earth, Mars 1 transmitted its final signal, a weak radio pulse that faded into the cosmic silence. Radio Moscow never officially announced the mission's failure, but behind closed doors, Soviet scientists knew they had lost their first ambassador to Mars somewhere in the vast darkness between worlds, carrying with it humanity's first real dreams of interplanetary exploration. Mars 2. Two identical spacecraft sat on launch pads 3,000 miles apart, each carrying humanity's most sophisticated interplanetary technology, and both were about to become monuments to cosmic ambition and earthly miscalculation. The Soviet Union's Mars 1969A and Mars 1969B missions represented the pinnacle of Cold War space engineering, featuring advanced panoramic cameras, soil analysis equipment, and atmospheric sensors that could have rewritten textbooks about planetary science. These weren't simple flyby missions like their predecessor. These bus-sized spacecraft were designed to actually land on Mars and transmit the first close-up images of the Martian surface back to Earth. Soviet engineers had spent 3 years perfecting every component, from the retro rockets that would slow the descent to the shock-absorbing legs, designed to cushion impact on alien soil. The timing was critical. Mars and Earth align favorably for interplanetary travel only once every 26 months, and the Soviets knew NASA was preparing their own Mars missions for the same launch window. On March 27, 1969, technicians began the final countdown for Mars 1969A at Baikonur Cosmodrome. The four-stage Proton K rocket stood 190 feet tall, its liquid oxygen and kerosene fuel tanks pressurized and ready. At exactly 10:40 Moscow time, the engines ignited with a roar that could be heard 20 miles away. For 51 seconds, everything went perfectly. The rocket climbed steadily through Kazakhstan's morning sky. Then, in an instant that would haunt Soviet space officials for decades, the entire assembly disintegrated in a fireball so massive it registered on seismographs across Central Asia. Mars 1969. The shockwave shattered windows 15 miles away, and in that single catastrophic moment, the Soviet Union lost not just a spacecraft, but their best chance at beating America to Mars. What should have been the triumphant launch of Mars, 1969A instead became one of the most spectacular and most covered-up disasters in space exploration history. The Proton K rocket had barely cleared the launch tower when its third stage suffered a catastrophic engine failure, turning 500 tons of rocket fuel into an airborne inferno that painted the Kazakh sky orange for 37 seconds. Soviet officials immediately declared a media blackout. No photographs, no news reports, no acknowledgement that anything had even happened. But you can't hide an explosion visible from orbit. American spy satellites captured the entire sequence, watching as debris rained down across a 50-square-mile area of the Baikonur Cosmodrome. The blast crater measured 200 feet across and 30 feet deep, and radioactive fuel contaminated the launch pad for months. More devastating than the physical destruction was what burned up in that fireball. 7 years of Soviet Mars program development, millions of rubles in cutting-edge technology, and the careers of dozens of rocket engineers who were quietly reassigned to other projects. The backup mission, Mars 1969B, was indefinitely postponed as investigators sifted through the wreckage, trying to understand how their most reliable rocket had become a 3,000-degree funeral pyre for humanity's Martian dreams. Leonid Brezhnev himself reportedly watched footage of the disaster and declared that Mars missions were too dangerous to continue. Mars 1971. Against all odds and political pressure, Soviet engineers refused to surrender their Martian dreams. And on May 19, 1971, they launched what would become both their greatest triumph and most heartbreaking near miss in space exploration history. Mars 2 lifted off from Baikonur with the weight of the entire Soviet space program on its shoulders, carrying not just scientific instruments, but the redemption of a nation's cosmic ambitions. This time, everything went flawlessly. The Proton K rocket performed perfectly. The trajectory calculations were precise to within 0.001 degrees, and for 193 days, the spacecraft hurtled through space toward its December rendezvous with the Red Planet. Soviet Mission Control tracked every signal as Mars 2 became the first human-made object to successfully reach Martian orbit and deploy a functional lander. The 1,210-kilogram descent module separated perfectly, its heat shield glowing white-hot as it slammed into the Martian atmosphere at 13,000 miles per hour. But Mars itself had other plans. A planet-wide dust storm, the largest ever recorded, had been raging for months, turning the entire Martian surface into an impenetrable orange hurricane. The lander's parachute system couldn't compensate for the chaotic atmospheric conditions, and instead of the gentle touchdown Soviet scientists had dreamed of, Mars 2 crashed into the Kryst-Planitia region at terminal velocity. In that devastating impact, the Soviet Union achieved a bitter milestone. They had successfully delivered the first human artifact to Mars, but it was now scattered across several square miles of alien terrain, silent forever. Mars earthquakes. The Red Planet is literally shaking itself apart, and the seismic data is so terrifying that NASA scientists are rewriting everything they thought they knew about planetary geology. On May 4, 2022, NASA's InSight lander detected something unprecedented, a magnitude 5.0 Marsquake that lasted over 6 hours and released energy equivalent to 32 billion joules, enough power to supply a small city for an entire day. This wasn't just another minor tremor, it was the most powerful seismic event ever recorded on another planet, and it revealed that Mars is far more geologically active than anyone imagined. InSight's ultra-sensitive seismometer had been listening to the planet's heartbeat for 1,318 Martian days, recording over 1,300 smaller Marsquakes, but this monster event shattered all previous records. The quake originated deep within Mars's interior, possibly from the Cerberus Fossae region, a network of massive fractures that stretch for thousands of miles across the planet's surface. What's truly mind-blowing is that Mars lacks the tectonic plates that cause earthquakes on Earth, meaning these violent tremors are generated by something else entirely. The planet's core is cooling and contracting, causing the entire Martian crust to crack like a drying mud puddle. French seismologist Philippe Lognon described the data as absolutely extraordinary, revealing that Mars experiences daily seismic activity that would terrify geologists if it happened on Earth. These discoveries completely overturn the old assumption that Mars is a geologically dead world, proving instead that it's a dynamic, evolving planet where the ground literally moves beneath your feet. Mars subsurface lakes. Buried beneath a mile of frozen Martian ice lies something that could, well, totally rewrite the search for extraterrestrial life. Liquid water lakes so vast they actually dwarf the Great Lakes, and they've been hiding there for millions of years. In 2018, Italian planetary scientist Roberto Orosai made a discovery that honestly sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Using radar data from the European Space Agency's Mars Express orbiter, his team detected a 12-mile-wide underground lake beneath Mars's south polar ice cap. This wasn't just frozen water or trace moisture. This was actual liquid water, maintained in its fluid state by a combination of geothermal heat from the planet's core and high salt concentrations that act like cosmic antifreeze. The radar penetration revealed what looks like a subglacial lake system, similar to those found beneath Antarctica's ice sheets, where Earth's most extreme organisms thrive in complete darkness. But here's where it gets truly extraordinary. Follow-up studies using Marsyas radar discovered not just one lake, but an entire network of interconnected water bodies spanning hundreds of square miles beneath the Martian polar regions. Orosai's team published their findings in Science magazine, describing radar signatures so clear they're unmistakable. The bright reflections can only come from liquid water interfaces. These subsurface oceans have remained liquid for potentially billions of years, protected from Mars's hostile surface by thick ice and sustained by planetary heat. If life ever existed on Mars, these hidden lakes represent its last refuge, dark, salty sanctuaries where Martian microorganisms might still be thriving right now, completely unaware that curious humans are 140 million miles away, planning missions to drill down and say hello. Mars organic matter. The Martian soil is literally crawling with the building blocks of life, and the evidence is so overwhelming that NASA scientists are frantically recalibrating their entire approach to the search for extraterrestrial organisms. On September 15, 2022, NASA's Perseverance rover made a discovery that sent ripples through the astrobiology community. Organic compounds embedded within Martian rock samples from the Jezero crater, a 28-mile-wide ancient lake bed that once held liquid water for millions of years. These aren't just trace amounts of carbon. We're talking about complex organic molecules including aromatic compounds and aliphatic chains that form the fundamental chemistry of life as we know it. Perseverance's Pixel instrument detected these compounds using X-ray imaging and spectroscopy, revealing organic concentrations 10 times higher than anything previously found on Mars. NASA astrobiologist Amy Williams described the findings as unprecedented, noting that the organic matter is preserved within sedimentary rocks that formed when Jezero crater was a thriving ancient lake ecosystem. What makes this discovery truly extraordinary is the variety and complexity of the organic compounds. They're not random carbon molecules but structured chemicals that could only form under specific environmental conditions. The rover's samples contain nitrogen-bearing organics, sulfur compounds, and hydrocarbon chains that mirror the chemical signatures found in Earth's oldest fossils. Thomas Zurbuchen, NASA's former associate administrator, called it the strongest evidence yet that Mars once supported conditions favorable to life. These organic treasures are now sealed in titanium tubes, waiting for the Mars sample return mission to bring them home for detailed laboratory analysis that could finally answer humanity's ultimate question. Moxie. Deep in the Martian wilderness, a toaster-sized machine is quietly performing alchemy, converting the alien atmosphere into breathable oxygen, and proving that humans might actually survive on the red planet without suffocating in 96% carbon dioxide. NASA's MOXIE experiment, or Mars Oxygen In Situ Resource Utilization Experiment, aboard the Perseverance rover, has been working Martian magic since April 20, 2021, splitting CO2 molecules apart and creating pure oxygen at a rate of 5.4 grams per hour, enough to keep an astronaut alive for 10 minutes of normal breathing. This isn't just a cool science demonstration, it's humanity's first successful attempt at living off the land on another planet. The Golden Box uses a process called solid oxide electrolysis, heating Martian air to 1,470 degrees Fahrenheit, and using electrical current to separate oxygen atoms from carbon dioxide molecules. Over 16 successful runs, MOXIE has produced a total of 122 grams of oxygen, more than 4 hours worth of breathable air for a single astronaut. MIT's Michael Hecht, the experiment's principal investigator, described the results as absolutely remarkable, noting that the device has consistently produced high-purity oxygen despite Mars's wildly fluctuating atmospheric conditions and temperature swings of over 170 degrees Fahrenheit. The implications are staggering. A scaled-up version of MOXIE could produce enough oxygen to fuel rocket engines for the return trip to Earth, eliminating the need to transport massive fuel tanks across 140 million miles of space. Mars is literally providing the life support systems that future human colonists will need to survive. NASA SpaceX. The ghosts of Soviet failure are now guiding humanity's greatest space partnership toward Mars, as NASA and SpaceX prepare to land the first humans on the red planet, using hard-won lessons written in the wreckage of decades of cosmic disasters. Elon Musk's Starship program isn't just ambitious engineering, it's the direct descendant of every Soviet Mars mission that exploded, crashed, or vanished into the cosmic void. The failures of Mars, 1969A, the heartbreak of Mars 2, and the seismic discoveries of InSight have created a roadmap of exactly what not to do when attempting interplanetary colonization. NASA's Artemis program and SpaceX's Mars architecture incorporate Soviet-era lessons about atmospheric entry, landing systems, and long-duration spaceflight that cost the USSR billions of rubles and countless careers to learn. The partnership officially began with commercial crew missions to the International Space Station, but the real target has always been Mars. NASA Administrator Bill Nelson and Elon Musk have committed to landing astronauts on Mars by the 2030s, using Starship's 100-ton payload capacity to transport everything from habitat modules to MOXIE-derived oxygen production systems. The Raptor engines that will power Starship to Mars burn methane and oxygen, the exact same fuel combination that can be manufactured on the Martian surface using atmospheric processing technology pioneered by failed Soviet experiments. What began as Cold War competition between superpowers has evolved into humanity's unified effort to become a multi-planetary species, built on the foundation of Soviet sacrifices that almost nobody remembers. That's the untold story of humanity's first Mars missions, Soviet secrets that almost changed history. From catastrophic explosions to accidental landings, these declassified missions proved that our journey to the Red Planet started decades before anyone realized. The courage of Soviet engineers and the lessons from their failures are literally powering today's Mars exploration. If this hidden space history blew your mind, smash that subscribe button and hit the bell icon so you never miss our cosmic secrets. Comment below. Which Soviet space mission shocked you the most? More space facts coming your way, space explorers.